winding up as in he didn't see any future for the UNP at all.
No, he said consider the option of winding it up.
He also said that, there needs to be a change in the leadership.
Yeah.
Now you're saying that, he is a good leader.
So Mr. Vikramasinghe has been the leader for 26 years. So nobody's disputing that it's a long period.
Was he actually thinking as a leader, or was he thinking of himself?
Leaders normally tend to be very selfish.
Do you see yourself taking over the leadership of the UNP soon?
Just waiting for an opportunity to come up again. I feel the next election will be a very revolutionary election in every sense of the word.
During the political crisis, the UNP took to the streets and protested. So protesting then is okay, but now taking to the streets and protesting and blocking traffic.
UNP protested, but I think there were 2 or 3 protests in Colombo. I also went for them.
Yeah.
They were not destructive.
Hello and welcome to another episode of On Fire here on Daily Mirror. I'm Easwaran Rutnam. The future of the UNP continues to be a topic that is being discussed these days. Is the UNP alive? Is it dead? What's happening to its future? The leadership issue as well is something that a lot of people are speaking about. With me on the program today is a senior UNP member, former member of parliament, Navin Dissanayake. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Easwaran. Really appreciate it.
So, you were not very active in politics since the last election. We see more of you on TikTok, of course, than on the political arena. What has Navin Dissanayake been up to these days?
Well, after the last election in 2020, as you know, the UNP got completely wiped out. So we also had a lot of soul searching to do about, like you mentioned, the party's future, whether we are going to be in the party. Believe it or not, there were several discussions in the current president's house about winding up the party.
Okay.
Right? So he actually came up with it, whether the party is going to be relevant or not. But we...
So winding up as in he didn't see any future for the UNP at all?
No, he said consider the option of winding it up.
Okay.
So, but we had some feel for the party. And also the statistics itself, although the SJB got 55 seats, there was a vast amount of UNPers who did not vote,
right? Who
did not go to the polling booth. So I was firmly of the view that we can get those UNPers back into the fold. And that has always been my thinking. Now, whether practically or doing that or not, I do not know. I can tell you, from my district, the Nureli district, which I'm still the district leader, that personally, and I'm telling this totally honestly, that I found a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of interest, a lot of vibrancy among UNPs this time, and I was able to get a very good list to come for the Nureli Municipal Council and Pradesh Sabhas. We teamed up with Mr. Tondaman, and I was pleasantly surprised by the easy run I had in gathering candidates. So, in fact, I was in Nureli last week also, and I was just looking at things very critically, because my training as a lawyer is to look at things critically. And we had 13 seats last time. My team was very confident of getting at least 6 seats this time. So with other alliances and all that, we were sure of forming the council. So I think, UNP has a future. How that future is going to be formulated is left to be seen. We have a huge asset in the presidency being with the UNP. And that is something that our opponents did not see, that they did not strategize. And it is proving to be a thorn on their sides. because the current president is a very good operator. He's a very good strategist. He may have his faults, but he's an experienced leader. So I feel that despite all the criticism that people make of him, and I have to be frank with you that I was also one inside the party. I was a critic.
Yeah, exactly. I remember at one of the press conferences, after the election with Arjun Ranatungi, that in that joint press con, you also said that, there needs to be a change in the leadership. Now you're saying that, he is a good leader. But then isn't he the main reason why the party has fallen apart?
Well, I can answer it like this. I think in your organization or any other organization that wants to grow and that wants to be vibrant, it is not for the UNP, but in general principles, leaders change, and there is a system within the organization to see that happens. Now, the Chinese Communist Party, they had a rule where the president is elected and he stays for 2 terms, and then after 12 years he is replaced by somebody else. So they have this thing called internal democracy within the CCP. So like that, now in our presidential system, you can run for 2 terms. So Mr. Wickramasinghe has been the leader for 26 years. So nobody's disputing that it's a long period. But you have to also have replacements coming up in the system. So I think as far as he is concerned, and from his point of view, during the last government, he did, I saw several people coming to your program and other programs and saying he did not bring up people like Lalit and Gamini and Premadas and all that. But surprisingly, in the last cabinet, he did bring up young leaders. He gave up Akila a cabinet slot, gave Sagala a cabinet slot, me a cabinet slot. Then Sajid Premadas got another plum ministries that he wanted. And Haren Fernando was given a cabinet slot. So these 5 people were given big breaks. And even a person like Duan was given non-cabinet Ministry of Defense, which is a big responsibility. So I don't think that criticism is correct of him, and he has been systematically, after his leadership, people like Karu Jayasuriya were brought up by him.
But it looked like he was strategically holding on to the party leadership, not giving that to anyone. I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but even you wanted to take on the leadership role as well, right? So don't you think that also, it's time that also changes?
Well, I have been thinking about that angle also, and especially after he became the president. And there is a saying called, does the means justify the ends? So if he had that inner feeling that he was going to be the president someday, wasn't it justifiable for him to hold on like this, go into parliament? And then he got lucky. So luck, not only luck, you can say there are so many angles and deals and all that. But when he went to meet the president that day, that fateful night, and when the president offered the prime ministership to him, I know he did not expect that. So within a matter of minutes, he decided. And I think when you're a leader...
Did he consult the party?
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
But it came suddenly to him. So when you're a leader, I think when opportunities come, you have to grab it. And certainly I remember when my father was alive, he got the opportunity to go back to the UNP. Most of the people, including Premachandra, in the UNF were against it. But he stuck to his guns and said, my future is the UNP and I'm going to go back. And then the others followed him. So I think when you're a leader and you aspire to be a leader, those are tough calls you have to make. And that night, when he was offered the PMship, I think within a matter of minutes, he did not even lay conditions. He said, I'm going to do it, provided I want the finance ministry and certain other things. I must have free hand on defense also. And then he decided to take it.
But was he actually thinking as a leader, or was he thinking of himself?
Well, again, another philosophical question, I think. Leaders normally tend to be very selfish. If you look at history, they're extremely selfish individuals. I'm not telling this about
Yeah.
Mr. Wickramasinghe, but generally leaders are self-motivated by their ego, by their sense of history, where they want to be seen in history. And I actually, since you asked this, I'm telling this to you, it's a bit of a secret. In March of last year, when the party was in a bit of a limbo and we were all wondering what's happening, I got up in the working committee and I spoke in English. And I said, look, where are we going? And there must be a sense of purpose, there must be a sense of destiny. And how do you want to be remembered as a leader? How is, when the history of this country is going to be written, how are you going to be remembered as a leader? And I thought I made my point very clear. But then a matter of months later, he was the president. So I think, life is all about, got to do with fate, got to do with
Grabbing
luck,
with opportunities.
getting opportunities.
Do you think that the opportunity that he took to be prime minister was the right move at that point?
Definitely. I would have done it. I mean, politics is about power and about retention of power.
But despite having to team up with someone the likes of Mahinda Rajapaksa,
Well, that is unpalatable. But in the context of where the country was, maybe he as an individual felt a sense of destiny, of history giving him a chance to prove himself. And to be fair by him, he never had full power in his career. Always been the prime minister under presidents. And apart from that short stint with D.V. Vijayatunga, Chandrika undermined him. And then we know the sad episode with Maithripala. So, so I think he has a chance to really prove himself. And time will tell whether he is successful or not. I have a feeling, honestly, that history will be favorable to him.
don't you feel, because this is a popular opinion these days, that the SLPP is using Ranil Wickramasinghe for their own survival, especially after all the protests, the Aragale and so on?
Normally, in my experience with Mr. Wickramasinghe, nobody can use him. It's the other way around normally.
So he's using them for his
normally
survival.
a person feels that they're using him, but in a very subtle way, he's using you.
But is he continuing with the UNP policies? Do you see a deviation from the historical policies that the UNP has been following?
I am in the UNP now because more than the personalities, I believe in the UNP policies. And I mean, if you look at modern day Sri Lanka, whatever we have achieved, I think it's mainly because of the UNP, whether it's the free education, whether it's the open economy, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's the Mahaveli, Gamudava, the infrastructure development, the telecom industry, even in your field, journalism, the liberalization of journalism, the criminal code being taken out of journalism. Ranil Wickramasinghe did that. So I think in that sense, the foundation of Sri Lanka has been laid by the UNP. And this is what I tell my SJB friends also. You're seen as appendage of the UNP, right? And that's a branding problem they have. And because the free market thinking is very much ingrained in our culture, UNP culture. Whereas the SJB is seen as a group of individuals. So this is the same problem my father had and Lalit had when they left the UNP. But because they were so big figures, they were large figures, and they were intellectually capable people, they had a following. But now it is more than the positives. People have their anger with Ranil Wickramasinghe, and that is what the SJB is about. Anger. It's about taking revenge. So in my thinking, I mean, as a young man, when I got into politics, when I was 28, 29, 30, I was a member of parliament. I was also feeling like that because I felt that he was not giving the place that I was due in the party. But that was the feelings of a very young man who was very raw. And I mean, if you look at the cabinet, the deputy ministers in the 2002 government, I was a deputy minister. Sagar was a deputy minister. Sajit was a deputy minister. So all three of us are still, in whatever circumstances, we are still in the field. And we have come up in life. through various experiences, we grow as human beings, you grow as a human being, you mature as a human being. So, right now I feel that in the context of politics, you have to be positive about things and then look at things positively. We have been ingrained in this culture of negative thinking all the time. We throw stones at people, we are jealous of people. Instead of that, I think you have to embrace the beauty of Sri Lanka, understand that we are in a difficult situation. And honestly, fundamentally, I believe that the current president is the best option to get us out of this very sad situation, which he did not create. Mind you, after Ravi departed the finance ministry, he gave the finance ministry to Mangala. And Mangala, we never thought that he would be a good finance minister. But he got those people around him, and when he left a positive, not a deficit, a positive balance of payment in the budget. So that was what the UMP is about financial management. So I think you have to give Ranil Wickremesinghe that opportunity to do that.
In our conversation, or in my conversations with some of the SJB members, they keep saying that they still have the green blood in themselves, that they want to go or not go back to the UNP, but they want to unite with the UNP, minus, of course, Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening in the immediate future?
Well, I think it's very unfair for them to say that. Most of them have got their breaks from Ranil Wickremesinghe. All of them really. If you look at all the key characters, Ranil Wickremesinghe has looked after them. So minus now, anyway, that minus thing is less now because he's the president. Earlier you could say that, but now you can't. So I think if amalgamation of both parties are possible, I think the constitution itself, Sri Lanka constitution itself provides that, and it can be done.
Do you see yourself taking over the leadership of the UNP soon?
Again, I have to answer that in a very philosophical manner, because I grew up in an environment where I saw leaders up close, starting from Jajawardena, and then going on to my father and Lalit, who were very ambitious. They wanted leadership, whether it was the prime ministership or the UMP leadership. I saw that up close and personal. When you look at the structure of leadership, my reading of historical figures, normally, those historical figures have come up to leadership by not going after positions. They have marked their time, they have proven their ability, and they have proven their integrity and their vision, and then chances have then come up. So if you look at the UNP's deputy leaders or assistant leaders, doesn't mean that you can be the UNP leader. Conversely, by having that slot, it gives you a bit of a leverage to come up to the leadership position. But I believe that the opportunities that have been given to me by the UNP, and on several other occasions as well, I have come up the ladder in 20 years of politics, and I'm marking time, and I'm just waiting for an opportunity to come up again. I feel the next election will be a very revolutionary election in every sense of the word. I think the traditional style of politics has really changed. I think there will be a like a breakup of political parties, ideologies, principles. Nobody might get a majority, but there will be like 30 member blocks into 5 or whatever, I don't know. So in that context, I feel a broader UNP alliance can potentially come up with about 40 to 50 seats, and I would certainly like to be in that alliance.
So you would also, so you're looking at coming back into parliament,
Yes,
contesting
yes.
and coming back into parliament.
See, this revolutionary idea that, for example, the JVP is propounding, cannot work, because we have a parliamentary democracy, and you can't disband parliament. The people's will is the parliament. So you can say Desivisipa Hamepa and all that, that kind of slogans, but ultimately it's the people who will decide on the future of this country. So, for us, it was very painful when the Rajapaksas came back. We worked against it. And, when we saw our whole efforts were being undermined by society and by the media networks. I don't want to mention the media networks, but you know what happened.
Yeah.
69 lakhs is not a small number. You have to understand that was the people's will. So you can't be bitter about it, you can't be angry about it. At that particular moment of time, people felt for whatever reason that Gota was better. And then the whole thing collapsed. So nobody expected it to collapse like this. Nobody. I mean, you would never expect Rajapaksa presidency to collapse in a matter of 2 years. But it has. So now, with the current financial crisis, President Wickremesinghe, without his team, he's a single man, without his team, he has to strategize on how to salvage the country.
But wouldn't UNP, hardcore UNPs, feel that the party has betrayed them by aligning with the Rajapaksas, despite the whole, the need to address the current crisis in the country and so on? The fact that, they worked against the Rajapaksas, they didn't want the Rajapaksas to be in office, and now President Wickremesinghe seems to be, some say protecting them and keeping them in power.
Well, the idea of protecting them, I mean, he is dependent on the parliamentary 134 seats. No denying that. You can't deny that. So if he is to survive, if he is to move forward, he can't. The room for maneuver is very limited. But certainly he can bring forth his management style, his leadership style, which he has done. I think there's a new alignment of political forces that are happening. People say that the alliance vote per vote has completely collapsed. I don't buy that. I think that their vote may have come by about 30%, 40% down, but their 60% is still there. And 60%'s best option is Ranil Wickremesinghe. They are also human beings. They are also Sri Lankans. They may have their faults. They are living, breathing Sri Lankans like you and me. They are also, a larger percentage of them want to live a good life in our country. And my grandfather, Navin Dissanayake, he was a SLFian. And he was the first MP for Nuwara in 1956 government. There's nothing wrong with that. And, so what is, my father left the UNP, came back as the deputy leader presidential candidate. So those things happen. My thinking on that is that if the 60% of the vote to a vote, and I think we can get about 20% of the UNP vote easily, maybe even more than that. We have a fighting chance in the presidential election. That's my thinking.
You don't see a shift of support moving more towards the NPP now? That's what even some in the SJB also feel, that there is a shift in the entire wave. It's going towards the NPP.
With the greatest of respect for the SJB, no, I'm not saying this because it's convenient for me. I say this as somewhat of a political strategist and who has been in the game for a long time, since I was 18 years old. Why is the NPP getting that leverage now? Because the SJB has failed. SJB is not having any traction. I don't know why. I can't give reasons for that. So I feel there's a lot of soul searching that the SJB has to do. There is a shift to the NPP, I accept that. But look, I mean, if they think they can get 50.1, it's illusion. Let's say a fourfold increase in their vote, which will bring them to 20%. So, I mean, that's what I'm going to say. And of course, then there are other forces like Easwaran Rutnam's group.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what Sarath Fonseca will do. So many imponderables before the next general election or presidential election. Certainly interesting times. People are finding it very difficult. The cost of living is tremendous. People are suffering. So it's not going to be easy for the government or us or Mr. Wickremesinghe. I am only in this because of Mr. Wickremesinghe. I theoretically I am against joining with the Rajapaksas. I don't see myself joining with them.
Right.
Right? Personally, I don't. I have nothing to do with them.
So if you are given some sort of role where you have to work with Rajapakshas, even you will not accept it.
It's like this: if anything flowing from the president, right? For example, the position of the governor is flowing from him; it's his representative.
Right.
Then I will accept it. But I'm not going to serve the Rajapaksa interests by taking that position. I will carry out the policies and the vision of the president as the governor. For example, I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's my line on that, and I have faith in Mr. Wickramasinghe's ability to steer this country out of this great morass that we are in now.
Mr. Wickramasinghe, when he was Prime Minister, this was in 2015, and even before that, he took a very strong stand on human rights, on accountability issues. Now he seems to be backtracking on that. What is your take on it?
Those weaknesses that we saw in him at the current moment can be his strengths. For example, I and a lot of my colleagues in the UMP feel that he is inflexible, but that quality may be good for him now, because when you're going into a tough negotiation round and when things have to be done, then you have to stick to your guns and do it. He has always been a Democrat as far as I'm concerned. He has had, even within the party, he has had secret votes for the leadership of the party. But if you talk about protest, Lee Kuan Yew said that he said that it's not law and order. He said order and law. It has to be order first and then law. So I believe in that. I don't think protests are there for people. It's their democratic right. But the greater good does not want protests to impede their lives. When you have protest on the street and you have 5-6 hour roadblocks, that is actually bad for the country. So you can protest as much as you want in the ground, in the public ground. There are so many grounds here in Sri Lanka, in Colombo. Please protest in those grounds, and your democratic rights are not undermined. Your voting rights are not undermined. Nobody said a word. The last provincial council elections were in 2012, 2014. Now not held for about 8 years. Nobody has said a word. JP
But then during the political crisis, the UNP took to the streets and protested. So protesting then is okay, but now taking to the streets and protesting and blocking traffic is
You mean during the Aragalia time?
Not during the Aragalia, during the 2018 crisis, when Mahinda Rajapaksha, when Maithripala Sirisena, deprived Wickramasinghe of his prime minister
was
post.
a blatant grab of power, which the Supreme Court has also said that that was a completely undemocratic move. UMP protested, but I think there were 2 or 3 protests in Colombo. I also went for them.
Yeah.
They were not destructive. You did not see the frontline socialist attitude of burning things and all this coming into play. So we can sit and argue for hours and hours about protest.
But isn't Wickramasinghe also, again, this is what some people feel, that he is also taking revenge on those who were involved in the Aragalia for setting fire to his house, and that's why he's determined to crack down on protests there. Otherwise, he probably would have let them continue.
I cannot answer that, Easwaran, because it was not my house that was burnt. So I know that I've been to the south so many times and had discussions with him in the south so many times. It was not a grandiose or a palatial house. It was a very simple house. But of course, as a man who has lived in that house for 60 years, you do have attachments.
Yeah.
You can't say you're devoid of feelings.
Yeah.
But in terms of cracking down on protest, I think the police has to be given those powers to ensure stability. Now, on the other hand, people who are close to Gotabaya tell me, look, I mean, we are surprised that this did not happen during Gotabaya's time, because that is something that we advised him, and he was undermined from within. I'm sure you heard of that as well.
Yeah.
But I think President Wickramasinghe is determined to work within the law within the rule of law and ensure that there is stability in the country.
But will he, or let's say, if you get a bigger role in governance, would you ensure justice for some of the crimes that took place when Rajapaksa was in office? Lasanta's murder, of course, is one.
Of course, definitely. I think Lasanta's murder is a black mark in the history of Sri Lanka. So many other journalists were attacked. Nothing has happened. Investigations went ahead. I know personally because one of my close relations were involved in those investigations. And he went up to a certain point, but he couldn't go beyond that. So I think when you murder somebody, nature itself looks after you. I think even Richard D'Souza's killing was tantamount to a crime of unimaginable, horrendous atrocity. So like that, things have happened in Sri Lanka. We say we are a Buddhist country, but largest amount of blood that has been spilled in 3 youth revolutions. Still a lot of anger and rancor going on. So I think we also as a country has to mature now, and we have to really go beyond this phase of we have to grow as a nation. And it's difficult, I think, when you have economic crisis going on. I can think of the 1937 depression, what kind of anger that caused, and a lot of revolutions that happened. Hitler himself came to power because of the economic crisis that Germany was going, and then he used the will of the people for his own machinations. So I think we are in for a very interesting and tough time.
What's your relationship like with Mayantha? He being the SJB, you being the UNP, your brother. Do you see the chances of either him coming onto this side? Obviously, you're not going to go to the SJB, but do you see that, do you think that you all can work together?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we have a very good brotherly relationship. I don't think politics should impede on that. It's his calling, it's his destiny, it's his hard work, where he wants to be.
Did you try to stop him
from
going with the SJB?
Actually, I didn't know he was going with the SJB.
Okay.
It was a very surprise thing for me as well. But that's the calling he made, and I think at that particular moment of time, maybe he was right, because Sajid obviously gave him a nationalist slot, and he's in Parliament. I'm not in Parliament. But now look, if you look at the context of the present moment, everybody is saying this year so I'm in that sense, I'm happy that I'm not in Parliament, and it was a time for reflection for me of growth and understanding the situation as it is, and then trying to position myself in the UNP. A lot of people I will be frank with you, they tell me, look, they say, Machang, UNP eකට අනාගතයක් නැහැ. And I am struck by that a lot. But I have this funny feeling that things are not as bleak as people make it out to be. And I have a funny feeling that a lot of people don't like him, but maybe he will have the last laugh, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that I think all Sri Lankans should, at least for 6-7 months, try and get together and work together to get this country out of this mess, and then we can go for election, general election or a presidential, and then decide on who we want in Parliament and who we want as a president. But because we're all in this together, right? We all have the same problems, the same economic issues that are affecting the middle class is now affecting the upper middle class. So it cuts across borders and race and religion and everything. So I think it's time that people get together and work instead of trying to undermine and trying to destroy things.
We'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for taking time and for being on the program.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
And that's all the time we have for you for On Fire for this week. Till next time, stay safe.